So in the last video, I left off talking about my high school years. But before we get back into that, in the background, what you're looking at is a 18 by 24 canvas. Just me doing Miles Morales version of Spider-Man. This piece will eventually be up for sale at some point. So during 9th and 10th grade, I was in high school in Philadelphia. I would often be off to the side and I would have my sketchbook. I would just draw. That's what I did. A lot of people didn't know my name, didn't ask my name. They just was asking me, what is that you doing? I'm drawing, obviously. But I was drawing a character, a Marvel character. His name was Solo. He wasn't a very popular character, but I was drawing him for about 2 weeks. And during this time, people would walk up after a while and they just started calling me Solo. So if you ever wondered where Solo was coming from, it was a nickname that I acquired prior to moving to North Carolina. So high school, it was just me doing what I did. One of the things that I was known for while in art class was doing character mashups. So I would take pieces of a bunch of the characters and just throw it all together. And I would just, that's what I did. I wasn't good enough to where I can create something out of my imagination yet. So I would look at stuff and try to just mash it together. But prior to moving to North Carolina, my art teacher would she would get on me because I had a very light hand. So what I mean by that is when I would render with pencil, everything turned out really light. I never would go into the darker territory as far as pressing down hard with the pencil to create really dark tones. So that was something that I was struggling with. But ultimately, life has its twists and turns, and I had to relocate. So just as I was warming up to high school in Philly, I had to get used to a whole new environment in North Carolina, which kind of pulled me deeper into, what I was doing as far as my artwork. Because of the path that I was on, as far as trying to move into a college to do art, down in North Carolina, they didn't really have a system set up. So when I moved down here, I actually was given the opportunity to have an extra class created just for me, so I can continue, on the path that I was on. But one of the things that was pretty cool was we had art shows and competitions where I got an opportunity to see more artwork from other people. With me being in a smaller school, there was only a handful of other artists who was actually interested in actually doing art. So I wasn't around as many people to learn from as I was in Philly, but it was still a decent experience as far as participating in the competitions, and I think I placed top 3 at one of them. But going into my senior year, it was more, I was trying to play sports and trying to figure out what I was going to do as far as, after I graduate. So you're still talking about, this was 1999. Just not having a whole lot of access to information like we do today. It was really difficult for me to figure out, exactly what I wanted to do. And everything kind of was last minute, leading up to graduation. So my only 2 options were to go to school in Raleigh for 1 year or to take a break. and then try to figure it out, while I took a break from school. So what I ended up doing was taking a break. Um, my whole focus was just to get back to Philly because that's where I wanted to be. But in the middle of that decision, I think it was only like 3 or 4 weeks, I found myself going to school in Philly. So this was the moment where I applied for the Art Institute of Philadelphia, and my major was computer animation. Now, mind you, when I applied for school, I didn't actually really know what computer animation was. It was explained to me, but I didn't realize it was going to be so much. So I quickly learned once I started getting into the computer stuff that animation wasn't for me, and I knew that my passion was in character design, and I wanted to do 3D character models for video games and movies and stuff like that. But just with it being 3D animation and being so broad of a subject, it was a lot of information coming at me, and it was coming at me real fast. So my first 6 months in school were really, really difficult. But after a while, I started to get my feet up under me, and I really started to, catch hang of what was going on. One of the main things that I learned was that it's not so much what the school can teach you, it's how much you're willing to teach yourself. I had roommates who slept like 2 or 3 hours a night, and they was making progress. And like I said this many a times to a lot of people, it's not a talent, it's not something that you're born with, it's something that you work on. So with me being back in Philly, I was having fun. I was hanging with my family and stuff like that. So I really wasn't diving in as deep as I should have been doing. I was doing enough to get the grades. I mean, I was still making A's and B's, but I wasn't pushing beyond, what I should have been doing. On top of the work ethic, I was already kind of at a disadvantage in comparison to the other students, with me never using computers or really owning the computer. And a lot of the guys and girls that was in the classes, they were familiar with the computer, so I had to learn, the different techniques with the artwork and the computers all at the same time. But like I said, I eventually got my feet up under me, and things started to roll along pretty good. So just giving a rundown of some of the things that I learned. Figure drawing, that's pretty much drawing the human figure. A lot of nakedness involved with that one. Anatomy, understanding bones, muscles, and how it protrudes to the skin. Color theory, graphic design, 2D and 3D computer animation, traditional animation, image manipulation, broadcast graphics, and 3D modeling. Those just maybe a quarter of the classes that I've taken. Of course, I had to do some of the maths and stuff like that, but that was pretty much like my first year of school. So you're talking about the age of 17, living downtown Philadelphia, and pretty much kind of like my first time being, I guess, on my own. Being in school was a pretty decent experience. Going into my second year, I really got, warmed up to what was going on. So at this point, I was mostly done with all of the traditional types of drawing. I was mostly diving in on the computer work. Now, I wish I could just sit here and say that everything went as planned. I graduated, I went into the industry as an artist, and made a whole lot of money, but that's not what happened. Due to some circumstances outside of my control, 6 months away from graduation, I had to leave school. And just maybe a month or two after leaving school, it was time to get a job. You know how it is when you come out of school and you got student loans. After 6 months, they looking for their money, so I had to do what I had to do. The plan was for me to go back to school after a few months, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. With how fast the technology was changing, it would be almost impossible for me to just jump back in school several months later and continue where I left off. So I guess to a degree, the dream died and the life of working a 9 to 5 began. For roughly 8 or 9 years, I really didn't do anything major as far as artwork. I picked up some new skills as far as working on cars, and that became the new passion. But in my next episode, I'm gonna talk about how the passion for art caught a little bit of a spark, and it rose up as the whole damn fire.
Painted, but also fixed. Some parts are actually super damaged. But I just found out it was actually his rear bumper is actually painted.
Alright, this thing is completed. One of the things I always believed in is that imperfection is perfection. So when you step back and you're looking at a piece of art, it all blends together, it looks nice. But let's take a closer look. There's a whole lot of randomness going on in there. And it all comes together. Another thing I added in was I snuck some webbing in there. So if you can kind of get the light to reflect just right, you can see some webbing in the background. I don't know how many hours I got into this thing, but I don't know, I guess maybe 10 to 12 hours. But it's done. On to the next project.